Brazil has just carried out the largest military exercise in its history, right on the border with Venezuela. Thousands of soldiers, war tanks, and long-range missiles. And all of this is happening in a tense scenario, while Venezuela mobilizes its armed forces in response to the United States. While 5 American fighter jets fly over the Venezuelan coast, while Cuba denounces threats to peace in the region, the Brazilian Minister of Defense says it's training to fight illegal mining, land grabbing, and internal threats in the Amazon. So,
this is training for us to adapt and continually improve our work to defend this country.
But then, why mobilize so many soldiers, war tanks, and the most powerful missile system in South America? Right there, on the border with Venezuela. The war with the United States, and most importantly, what's happening on that border, which few are fully explaining. Let's start with the facts. On October 3rd, the Brazilian armed forces held a show of force in Boa Vista, the capital of Roraima. Operation Atlas brought together about 10,000 military personnel from the Navy, Army, and Air Force. Officially, this is the largest military exercise ever held in Brazil. The operation extended across 4 Amazonian states: Roraima, Amazonas, Paraná, and Amapá. But the final phase takes place precisely in Roraima, with actions concentrated in Boa Vista and in the city of Bonfim, right on the border. And this is where we connect a piece of this puzzle. This exercise wasn't planned overnight. The planning started in February 2024, and there's a very concrete reason for that. Between the end of 2023 and the beginning of 2024, Venezuela threatened Guyana militarily because of the territorial dispute over Essequibo. The tension reached critical levels and Brazil reacted. It sent 28 armored vehicles to reinforce the defense in Roraima. In this sense, Operation Atlas is the natural and planned continuation of this strategic strengthening. Meanwhile, on the other side of the border, Venezuela was announcing its own military exercises. President Nicolás Maduro called the Bolivarian National Armed Force and the Bolivarian Militia for an exercise on October 4th. But this Venezuelan exercise is different. It was described as organizational and for verification. In other words, it doesn't involve moving large armed contingents. The focus is to train commanders and test communication between the forces. Venezuela says this is a direct response to the United States. That's because, on October 2nd, at least 5 American fighter jets were detected flying about 75 kilometers off the Venezuelan coast, near Maiquetía Airport. Maduro's government classifies this as a provocation that threatens the sovereignty of his country. And here we see a pattern that keeps repeating itself. A month earlier, in September, Venezuelan F-16 fighter jets of an American destroyer in international waters. The Pentagon called this a provocative maneuver. In recent months, this tension has only increased. In September, the United States sent about 10 fighter jets and several warships to monitor the Caribbean. The official justification? Combating drug trafficking. But Venezuela sees this as a direct military threat and a possible preparation for intervention. Now, Brazil and Venezuela are both conducting military exercises almost simultaneously. And so, the inevitable question is, are these events connected, or is it just a coincidence? To understand this, let's look at what Brazil brought to Roraima. The Astros system is the star of the show. This is a multiple rocket and missile launcher manufactured by the Brazilian company Avibraz. And there's something impressive about it. Its ability to hit targets at distances between 9 and 300 kilometers. 300 kilometers! Let me put that into perspective. From Boa Vista to the border with Venezuela, it's just a few kilometers. With this system, positioned in Roraima, Brazil has the capability to strike strategic targets far beyond the border. But it's not just the Astros. The Army brought 40 armored vehicles, including the Guarani, which are personnel carriers, and the Leopard tanks, which are the main battle tanks. The Air Force deployed aircraft to the SKC-390 Millennium for tactical transport. Besides fighter jets, there are 29 Super Tucano aircraft, plus more. The Navy is participating with the multipurpose aircraft carrier Atlántico, the largest warship in Latin America, which transported more than 1,000 military personnel and 700 tons of equipment from Rio de Janeiro to the region. The logistical scale is impressive. Part of this equipment traveled more than 4,000 kilometers, being transported from Rio Grande do Sul to Roraima. Just to give you an idea, this distance is almost like leaving Lisbon, crossing all of Europe and arriving in Moscow, Russia. Given all this show of force, it's natural to ask what the reason for it is. The official version from the Brazilian government is straightforward. The Minister of Defense, José Múcio, compared the military training to going to the gym, to work out. In his words, it's not to fight with anyone, it's to be prepared. He also said that the Amazon faces multiple threats: land invasion, illegal mining, land grabbing, international espionage, and criminal organizations linked to drug trafficking. And that Brazil needs to be ready to defend the region against anything that harms the Amazon. And all of this makes sense. These are real and documented threats. But Operation Atlas goes far beyond that. With 10,000 soldiers, combat tanks, and missiles with a range of 300 kilometers, Brazil is testing its ability to project power in one of the most challenging terrains in the world. And here's a factor that many people don't know about. Brazil is a world reference in jungle warfare. This specialty requires extreme physical endurance, adaptation to hostile terrain, and operating under weather and isolation conditions that few armies in the world can handle. And it's precisely because of this jungle specialization that Roraima is so strategic. The border in Roraima is over 1,400 kilometers long and has historically always had a limited military presence. But with the growing tensions in the region, that's changing. By deploying 10,000 soldiers and heavy military equipment there, Brazil is demonstrating its ability to respond quickly in the country's most strategic region for the defense of the Amazon. And the timing for this is no coincidence either. Operation Atlas is taking place just weeks before Conference of the Parties, 30 the World Conference on the Environment, which will be held in November in Belém. More than 60 countries will be represented, with the eyes of the world focused on the Amazon. And Brazil is making it clear, even before that it has the ability and the will to defend the region. This is a strategy that analysts call deterrence by presence. Brazil is not taking sides between Venezuela and the United States. It is making sure that its territory does not become a variable in the equation of other people's conflicts. So, going back to the initial question. Are the Brazilian and Venezuelan exercises connected? No, not directly. They are responses to different pressures. Venezuela is reacting to what it sees as American military encirclement. As for Brazil, well, it is carrying out a plan that began more than a year and a half ago, when the Essequibo crisis showed that the region needed permanent military strengthening. Even so, it's really striking to see these things happening at the same time, in a scenario that's getting more and more complicated. While Venezuela and the United States are escalating tensions, Brazil is drawing a clear line. It is not directly threatening Venezuela, nor aligning itself with the United States. In fact, it's showing that Brazilian territory will be defended by its armed forces, no matter what happens around it. The message was given. This border has an owner and he is prepared. And what do you think about this operation? Was this show of force necessary now? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this video helped you understand what's happening at our border, share it with someone who needs to know. And subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next analyses. See you next time.